Voyager 2 probe after a heartbeat signal was picked up. Contact with the spacecraft launched in 1977.
But the US Space Agency has said that it has successfully reconnected its space probe after a brief scare.
A faint carrier wave pulsed across the void, almost too weak to be real. A whisper stretched thin over the unimaginable gulf between the outer solar system and Earth. Deep space engineers stared at their consoles in disbelief as the signal resolved, stabilized for a moment, and showed its unmistakable signature. Voyager 2 had spoken again. After weeks of silence and uncertainty, after fears that the spacecraft might finally have succumbed to the brutal environment beyond the heliopause, a transmission had arrived. And this time, it carried something so unexpected and so out of pattern that it sent an electric ripple through every scientific team monitoring it. The message hinted at readings unlike anything the mission had ever produced, patterns that seemed deliberate in their organization, structured in a way that defied the usual noise of cosmic radiation and statistical chance. What Voyager 2 had just sent was not simply telemetry, it was a warning carved into radio waves. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. At first glance, the signal looked chaotic, an uneven stream of data packets and amplitude variations, but the longer scientists watched, the clearer it became that there was a rhythm within the irregularity. Voyager 2 had always been a reliable instrument, even when battered by time, distance, and the weakening trickle of nuclear energy sustaining it. This signal, however, seemed to originate from a system under stress, a transmitter modulating its output as if an onboard process had forced a change. Yet the fluctuations were not random. They repeated at intervals that corresponded almost perfectly with the spacecraft's orientation scans, meaning some external trigger had interacted with Voyager 2's sensors in a consistent, directional manner. As analysts dug deeper into the data, the shock grew. The packets contained anomalous readings from the plasma wave subsystem, an instrument designed to detect vibrations in ionized gases. These waves had always been valuable indicators of the environment beyond the heliopause, hinting at the density of interstellar space. But the new readings revealed something massively different. Instead of the expected background hiss of charged particles drifting between distant stars, the sensor registered sharp gradients, shifts in density, many magnitudes larger than ever recorded. It was as if Voyager 2 had entered a region of turbulence where the normally placid interstellar medium had been compressed or disturbed by a force sweeping across it. Even more unsettling were the magnetic field measurements. For decades, these instruments had relayed smooth, predictable lines tracing the subtle flow of galactic magnetic fields. Now the data showed a sudden and drastic twist, as though an invisible current had coiled tightly around the spacecraft and then relaxed in a series of oscillations. Every oscillation aligned with the same repeating intervals found in the plasma wave patterns. This synchronization suggested an impulse passing through the interstellar medium, something large, fast-moving, and energetic enough to distort both matter and magnetic structure on scales Voyager 2 had never before encountered. Within hours, modeling teams attempted to reconstruct the event that could have produced such disturbances. Concepts that had always lived on the fringe of astrophysical speculation suddenly found themselves at the center of discussion. A shock front from a distant supernova moving faster than predicted, a massive ejection of plasma from an unknown stellar object, or perhaps a high-velocity cloud fragment pushing through the galaxy like a cosmic storm. But none of these fit the pattern perfectly. Supernova remnants, though powerful, left signatures with broader spectrums. Plasma ejections from stars dissipated too quickly at interstellar distances, and high-velocity clouds did not produce the tight, rhythmic distortions embedded in the data. The signal structure became even more unnerving when analysts realized that the amplitude spikes corresponded to slightly delayed fluctuations in Voyager 2's low-frequency broadcast. It appeared that the spacecraft was not only recording the disturbance, but also reacting to it, adjusting power levels and transmitter focus as though compensating for interference. The behavior resembled an automated emergency response, a set of protocols long dormant, built into the spacecraft to maintain contact under extreme conditions. But the system was not supposed to trigger unless there was a significant threat to communications integrity. Whatever Voyager 2 had encountered had forced it to defend its voice across billions of kilometers. When word spread to the wider scientific community, the discussions intensified. Some specialists suggested that the disturbance could be the leading edge of a larger, more complex phenomenon moving through the local bubble of space. If the front was broad enough and Voyager 2 was already within its reach, then Earth might detect related anomalies within months or weeks. Others argued that the variation could indicate a fundamental shift in the heliopause boundary, a sign that external pressures were compressing or reshaping the bubble that shielded the solar system from the denser environment beyond. One faction considered the possibility that the heliosphere itself was beginning to fluctuate more violently, perhaps in response to long-term galactic cycles. The solar system was not stationary. It drifted through the Milky Way along a path that carried it through zones of varying radiation, particle density, and magnetic orientation. If Voyager 2 had encountered a region of heightened activity ahead of Earth's trajectory, it could be signaling the first tangible evidence of environmental conditions the solar system was moving toward. The implications of this idea were vast, touching on everything from climate modeling to radiation. Shielding, since the heliosphere played a central role in regulating the flux of cosmic particles that reached the inner planets. Through all this excitement, the spacecraft itself remained a distant, tiny sentinel, drifting through darkness so complete that even starlight seemed diluted. Every part of its transmission carried the weight of age. Built in the 1970s, powered by a slowly fading nuclear battery, Voyager 2 had long surpassed its anticipated lifetime. It was a relic of an era when telemetry packets were measured in bytes rather than streams, when engineers had to invent new ways of thinking simply to make the mission viable. And yet it persisted, carrying knowledge no other human-made object possessed, its sensors tasting the boundary between solar and galactic space. The idea that Voyager 2 had sent a warning became harder to ignore as more decoded data emerged. The patterns were too consistent, too sharply defined, too clearly indicative of an event or force that was not static. A wave of some kind was moving. The spacecraft's instruments had captured its arrival, its crest, and hints of continuing oscillations. And because data arrived with a substantial time delay, over 18 hours one way, even at the speed of light, it meant the disturbance had already passed the point where Voyager 2 recorded it. The wave was still traveling onward. Astrophysicists began observing nearby regions of interstellar space with renewed urgency. Telescopes sensitive to radio emissions swept the sky for signs of the same turbulence Voyager 2 had detected. Space weather experts examined variations in cosmic ray flux reaching Earth, looking for subtle increases or shifts in energy distribution. Although no definitive match appeared immediately, a gradual rise in high-energy particle detections caught the attention of several observatories. While not conclusive, the timing overlapped suspiciously well with the expected propagation of a disturbance like the one inferred from Voyager 2's data. As analysis continued, the conversation expanded beyond scientific circles. The idea that humanity had received a distant alarm from one of its oldest emissaries resonated deeply. Voyager 2 was more than a spacecraft, it was a symbol of curiosity, perseverance, and the drive to push boundaries. For decades it had drifted silently, sampling a realm no other craft had explored. Now its message hinted that something immense was stirring in the darkness, a change in the cosmic environment that demanded interpretation. The nature of interstellar space had always been theoretical, pieced together from telescopic observations and models. Only Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 had provided direct measurements, and both had often challenged expectations. They had shown that the heliopause was not smooth, but wrinkled, dynamic, and reactive. They had detected unexplained rises in cosmic ray intensity and magnetic irregularities that forced revisions to long-standing models. Each of these discoveries had reshaped the understanding of where the solar system ended and the galaxy began. The new transmission pushed those boundaries again. It implied that the region beyond the heliopause was not a static environment, but one subject to powerful shifts. Perhaps these shifts were infrequent, occurring on timescales so vast that no spacecraft had previously witnessed them. Perhaps they were localized structures drifting through the galaxy, remnants of ancient stellar events, or products of turbulent galactic dynamics. If Voyager 2 had intercepted such a structure, then mapping its form and movement became essential. Interpretations multiplied. One emerging hypothesis suggested that the disturbance was a shock wave from a region of compressed interstellar material shaped by interactions with nearby star-forming regions. Such shock waves were believed to travel slowly, expanding over thousands of years, but if Voyager 2 was now encountering such a front, the local interstellar neighborhood might be more active than previously thought. Another hypothesis revolved around magnetic reconnection, a phenomenon where twisted magnetic fields snapped into new configurations, releasing bursts of energy that could ripple through surrounding space. If this event were occurring on a galactic scale, the effects could span light years. One of the most intriguing implications emerged from the possibility that such disturbances could influence the heliosphere directly. The heliosphere acted as a protective bubble created by the solar wind, repelling much of the incoming galactic radiation. If a shockwave or magnetic disruption reached its boundary, the heliosphere might shrink or deform, altering the influx of high-energy particles entering the solar system. While Earth's magnetic field provided an additional layer of shielding, changes at the heliopause could ripple inward, affecting everything from satellite systems to atmospheric chemistry. Communication specialists examined the transmission from an engineering perspective. The modulation patterns hinted that Voyager 2's onboard systems had shifted into an automatic protective mode. This meant the disturbance had not only been detected passively, but had actively interfered with the spacecraft's ability to broadcast. The power fluctuations could indicate that external electromagnetic forces had intruded upon its circuitry. Although Voyager 2 was hardened against cosmic conditions, it had never been designed for events of this magnitude. The fact that it had stabilized enough to send a coherent burst of data was remarkable in itself. Teams also wondered whether the transmission might include stored self-diagnostic information. If so, analyzing it could reveal the precise moment when the disturbance reached the spacecraft. That timestamp, when corrected for light time delay, could serve as the reference point for calculating the disturbance's current position and speed. If the wavefront was wide enough, Earth-based instruments might detect its signature later, providing an opportunity to confirm Voyager 2's readings with independent measurements. Meanwhile, theorists turned their attention to the larger cosmic context. The solar system's position in the Milky Way placed it on a gradual orbital path through varying regions of gas, dust, and magnetic structure. Some sections of this orbit were more turbulent than others, with denser clouds or regions influenced by ancient supernova explosions. There was long-standing speculation that the solar system might periodically pass through zones of increased radiation or magnetic disruption, potentially affecting planetary climates or biological evolution. If the disturbance Voyager 2 detected was evidence of such a region, then the implications stretched far beyond a single anomalous signal. Other thinkers entertained even broader possibilities. Interstellar space was not empty. It was a dynamic environment shaped by forces humanity scarcely understood. The structural filaments of the galaxy, the interactions between dark matter and ordinary matter, and the energetic processes near distant massive stars could all generate phenomena that traveled outward like cosmic tides. Voyager 2 might have sampled one of these tides, providing the first direct measurement of an effect previously hidden by observational limitations. As teams pored over the transmission, the emotional dimension of the moment became undeniable. For nearly half a century, Voyager 2 had journeyed outward, a silent testament to human ingenuity. It had visited the giant planets, revealed the storms of Neptune, captured the rings of Uranus, and then drifted onward into a realm devoid of landmarks. Now it had sent a message suggesting that this realm was far from tranquil. Something vast and unknown had brushed against it. The implications for science were immense. If confirmed, the disturbance would force a re-evaluation of interstellar processes and the solar system's place within the galaxy. It would influence future mission planning, emphasizing the need for more craft capable of studying the outer regions directly. It might even prompt discussions about how humanity prepared for long-term changes in the cosmic environment, especially if such disturbances proved cyclical or more common than thought. As researchers added layer upon layer of interpretation, one theme emerged repeatedly. Voyager 2 had given a rare glimpse of something in motion, something that had not yet reached the solar system's inner regions. It had effectively served as an early warning instrument, a distant outpost detecting a shift in the galactic winds long before they reached Earth. The warning was not of danger in the conventional sense, but of change, of movement, of forces greater than the sun's familiar domain. Every measurement in the transmission pointed to that central realization. The plasma density spike indicated compression. The magnetic oscillations indicated twisting. The power fluctuations indicated interference. The synchronized intervals indicated a structured front, not random turbulence. It was as if Voyager 2 had been caught momentarily in the crest of a wave rolling across the interstellar medium. And by surviving long enough to transmit the data back, it had given humanity a narrow window of insight. The message carried a deeper symbolism as well. Humanity's oldest operating spacecraft had reached farther than any other creation and returned with evidence that the galaxy itself was alive with motion. For generations, the stars had been seen as fixed points in a quiet night sky, a backdrop to human life. But Voyager 2's transmission challenged that perception. It reminded everyone that the galaxy was not a still canvas, but a churning ecosystem of energy and matter, constantly shifting in rhythms measured in millennia. What lingered most strongly in the minds of those studying the data was the recognition of how little had been directly observed before this moment. The region beyond the heliopause had always been treated as a remote, almost abstract environment. Yet Voyager 2's transmission made it personal. It connected the distant frontier of the solar system to the present moment on Earth, bridging nearly 20 billion kilometers with a message carved into radio waves. As more pieces of the transmission were decoded, the sense of urgency deepened. The disturbance was not fading. The patterns suggested sustained movement, as though the spacecraft had entered the outermost layers of a vast, flowing structure. If this structure extended across light years, then the solar system's trajectory might carry it deeper into the phenomenon over time. What that would mean remained open to interpretation, but the potential effects on cosmic ray levels, heliospheric dynamics, and magnetic shielding demanded careful study. Voyager 2 had issued its warning not through intention, but through endurance. Its instruments, battered yet persistent, had captured a moment of cosmic upheaval and relayed it faithfully. The signal, faint as it was, carried the weight of significance. It spoke of forces humanity had yet to catalog, of movements in the interstellar medium that defied prior assumptions of a galaxy far more complex and restless than previously understood. The transmission ended abruptly, fading into the background noise of the universe, but the message it carried continued to reverberate through the scientific world. It had opened a door to new understanding, compelling researchers to look outward with renewed determination. Something was happening beyond the boundaries of the solar system, and Voyager 2, humankind's distant ambassador, had been the first to encounter it. It had spoken from the edge of the sun's reach, not with words, but with data that carried a clear and urgent implication. The galaxy was stirring, and its movements could no longer be ignored. Voyager 2 had sent its warning across the void, a fragile signal carrying the promise of discovery and the reminder that even in the coldest regions of space, change was always unfolding. The hours that followed the initial shock of the transmission brought a new wave of attention to the subtle details within the dataset. Specialists from multiple fields converged to dissect sections of the signal that had previously been overlooked, segments initially dismissed as noise, but now suspected of containing additional structure. These faint traces, barely distinguishable from the cosmic background, carried an unexpected signature, fluctuations that did not match any known instrument behavior aboard Voyager 2. The variations formed a narrow band of frequencies that shifted in a pattern too precise to be random. Something external had impressed this structure onto the signal, altering the carrier wave itself rather than the telemetry data. This realization deepened the mystery. For decades, deep space transmissions had passed through interstellar material without noteworthy alterations. Absorption, scattering, or minor distortions were expected, but never structured modulation. The new pattern hinted that the disturbance Voyager 2 had encountered was not merely a physical wave or a magnetic twist. It seemed capable of interacting with electromagnetic signals in a way that produced consistent imprints. That observation opened an entirely new line of thought. The disturbance might possess properties that influenced radio frequencies in a manner not previously observed in natural phenomena. The engineering teams quickly ran simulations to determine whether Voyager 2's aging transmitter could have inadvertently produced these modulations. They modeled power fluctuations, hardware decay, and temperature variations. None of the simulations came close to reproducing the exact frequency pattern detected. The transmitter, despite its advanced age, had never before exhibited behavior that resembled this new signature. If the spacecraft had not produced it, then some element of the surrounding environment had intervened, shaping the outgoing signal with a consistency that could not be attributed to ordinary turbulence. Scientists began re-examining old datasets for any sign of similar anomalies. Archives from both Voyager spacecraft were scanned line by line with algorithms searching for patterns that resembled the new modulation. For weeks, none emerged. This absence reinforced the belief that Voyager 2 had crossed into a region of space unlike anything previously sampled. Even the faintest resemblance to the newly detected structure was missing from decades of interstellar measurements. Whatever had produced this modulation was entirely new. Attention turned to the orientation of the spacecraft during the event. Telemetry indicated that Voyager 2's attitude thrusters had made several minute adjustments during the disturbance, as if responding to subtle forces. The changes were too small to trigger alarms, but significant enough to suggest the spacecraft had been nudged. Engineers had long assumed the interstellar medium exerted negligible physical force on the spacecraft, yet now the readings implied otherwise. A gentle but measurable influence had acted upon it, not enough to alter course dramatically, but enough to register in the attitude control logs. This implication sparked an intense debate. If the disturbance carried momentum, even in minute amounts, it could signify a moving front with physical substance rather than a purely magnetic or energetic phenomenon. Something had brushed against the spacecraft, exerting a pressure too gentle for human intuition, but detectable by Voyager's sensitive stabilization systems. The idea that a physical structure, perhaps a cloud of exotic particles or a filament of compressed interstellar material, was sweeping through space created a new layer of urgency. Weeks later, a breakthrough came from an unexpected direction. A group analyzing the low-level harmonics discovered that the modulation pattern aligned with a mathematical relationship resembling resonance. The frequencies corresponded to multiples of a base frequency that matched the typical oscillation rate of certain interstellar plasma instabilities. Yet the harmonics were too cleanly spaced for natural instabilities, which tended to produce smeared continua rather than crisp, evenly stepped frequencies. This suggested that whatever Voyager 2 had encountered was capable of maintaining coherence over vast distances. Coherence on that scale was virtually unheard of in natural plasma dynamics. Most phenomena that produced structured waves, such as pulsars or rotating magnetospheres, generated signals tied directly to the cycle of an object. But the disturbance encountered by Voyager 2 had no apparent central source. It seemed to be a free-floating structure, drifting through space with internal organization intact. That defied conventional understanding of how interstellar matter behaved. Theoretical physicists began proposing models to explain how such coherence could persist. One idea posited that the disturbance was part of a filamentary network formed by magnetic tension between distant stellar regions. These filaments could theoretically store energy and release it in undulating waves as they shifted. If Voyager 2 had crossed one such filament, the spacecraft might have recorded the release event as the coherent oscillations now seen in the data. Another idea suggested the presence of particles rarely observed in ordinary space, particles that interacted weakly with matter but strongly with magnetic fields. If a concentration of such particles drifted into contact with more conventional plasma, the result could create structured distortions. In that model, Voyager 2 had stumbled across a boundary between two different kinds of interstellar environments, revealing a transition zone with unexpected properties. These theories, while speculative, shared a common thread. The disturbance represented a larger system, not an isolated event. Its coherence, momentum, magnetic complexity, and frequency behavior suggested scale, possibly enormous scale. And if such structures existed in interstellar space, then Voyager 2 had uncovered a phenomenon that may have been shaping the galaxy for millions of years, invisible until now. As the scientific world grappled with these implications, communications analysts returned to the signal itself, searching for any additional layers of information. They discovered something subtle but deeply significant. The amplitude modulations appeared to reflect not only the external disturbance, but also the spacecraft's attempt to counteract it. During the event, Voyager 2's transmission system had made a series of micro-adjustments, rapidly shifting power distribution across its hardware. These shifts created brief imbalances that were recorded in the transmission. By studying these imbalances, analysts realized they could reconstruct moments when the disturbance momentarily overwhelmed one part of the transmitter. This reconstruction allowed teams to map the intensity peaks of the interference. The resulting map revealed a repeating curve, an oscillating intensity wave that seemed to pass across Voyager 2 at regular intervals. The curve resembled a standing wave pattern, something that forms when two waves of similar frequency meet and combine into stable nodes. That raised a startling possibility. The disturbance might not have been a single wave, but a set of waves interacting with each other. If so, the region of space Voyager 2 had entered was not simply turbulent, it was dynamic, perhaps containing multiple overlapping fronts moving in different directions. This revelation dramatically broadened the scope of investigation. If the disturbance consisted of interacting waves, then it could be part of a larger oscillatory field within the interstellar medium. This field might be influenced by gravitational interactions, magnetic tensions, or even long-range coupling between distant regions of plasma. The concept of the galaxy possessing vast, oscillating structures was not new, but direct evidence of such structures had never been obtained. Now, Voyager 2's transmission hinted that it had become the first probe to sample one directly. Meanwhile, computational astrophysicists attempted to determine the scale of the phenomenon by modeling how large a structure must be to produce the harmonics and standing wave effects observed. Early simulations indicated that the disturbance could stretch across several astronomical units at minimum, possibly extending for dozens or even hundreds. If the structure was moving at high velocity relative to the solar system, it could have been drifting through interstellar space for ages. Voyager 2 may have happened to be in the right place at the right time to intercept it. Further insights came from examining the minor time delays embedded in the signal. As the disturbance passed through the spacecraft's surroundings, the density of charged particles fluctuated, altering the dielectric properties of space itself. These fluctuations caused tiny delays in the arrival of different frequencies within the signal. By measuring these delays with extraordinary precision, researchers constructed a profile of how the local environment changed during the event. This profile revealed gradient layers, as though the disturbance was stratified, with regions of varying density stacked like ripples within ripples. Such stratification pointed toward a phenomenon with internal architecture. Instead of a single chaotic mass, the disturbance was composed of multiple layers, each moving with slightly different velocities and carrying distinct magnetic orientations. The layered structure was reminiscent of shock fronts within stellar winds, but the scale and consistency were far greater. The data suggested something more organized, possibly analogous to a giant, drifting wave packet formed through the interaction of large-scale galactic forces. This interpretation led scientists to examine galactic models for clues. The Milky Way's spiral arms were regions of intense star formation and turbulence. As stars aged, exploded, or shed material, their interactions created waves of energy and matter that propagated outward. One idea proposed that Voyager 2 had encountered a relic of such an event, a wave that had traveled across interstellar space for tens of thousands of years. Over that time, it could have stabilized into a coherent front. The notion that ancient stellar eruptions could still shape the trajectory of interstellar matter millions of years later became a focal point of discussion. As debates unfolded, researchers turned their attention to the potential interaction between the disturbance and the heliosphere. Although the wavefront had not yet reached the inner solar system, the data from Voyager 2 suggested it was traveling in that direction. If it eventually intersected the heliosphere, the boundary might deform or shift. That deformation could alter solar particle flow patterns, potentially influencing radiation levels within the solar system. These ideas were purely theoretical, but the possibility highlighted the importance of understanding the wave's behavior. Even more striking was the discovery of a second, weaker modulation pattern superimposed on the main disturbance signature. This secondary pattern resembled a slower oscillation, as though the wavefront carried an underlying beat. The beat frequency was extremely low, suggesting that the structure was not uniform but pulsed over large distances. The existence of such a substructure complicated every interpretation. If the disturbance pulsed, then it might interact with the heliosphere intermittently rather than in a single pass. It could cause multi-phase shifts in the solar system's boundary. As the investigation broadened, the role of Voyager 2 took on new significance. The spacecraft had become a probe not only of interstellar matter, but of galactic-scale processes. Its ancient sensors, never intended for such discoveries, had captured the first direct evidence of dynamic structures drifting through the interstellar medium. Every byte of the transmission became precious, revealing layers of complexity that demanded deeper study. Astrophysicists began discussing the possibility that the disturbance might be part of a larger network of moving fronts. If so, the galaxy could be filled with dynamic patterns, some gentle, some powerful, all interacting across light years. The solar system's movement through such a landscape could mean periodic encounters with these structures over cosmic timescales. These encounters, though rare, might shape the long-term evolution of the heliosphere. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Voyager 2's warning? What do you think will happen next? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.